Hi, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't been here before, my name is Savannah Wills, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm filming a video on my experience in the Kent State Bachelor of Fine Arts of Fashion Design program. I recently graduated, so I would have done the program fall semester 2021 and also spring semester 2022. Then I graduated, so it's still kind of fresh. It's only the following fall. But yeah, thanks for joining me. I ran a Q&A on my Instagram story, so first I'll sort of explain the program. Maybe I'll reference the Kent State website itself, and then I will get into answering some of your questions. When you pursue fashion design at Kent State, your senior year, you make the decision your junior year, but you have the decision to choose between graduating with just a Bachelor of Arts degree in fashion design or going after the Bachelor of Fine Arts in fashion design. I chose Bachelor of Fine Arts, and when you go to Kent State, they'll do a good job of explaining it to you. There are a few things, though, that I feel through the intro sessions and things like that weren't clear to me until I actually was in the program, and that's kind of what I wanted to explain today. So the Bachelor of Fine Arts program, really it's just one additional class. Either way, you're going to have the portfolio class, you're going to have whatever else you need to graduate at that point in your educational career. But the Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, I, for some reason, thought it was something a little bit bigger, but really it is just an extra class. Fall semester, now this may have changed because I have noticed that they like to make edits every year, which I think is healthy, so maybe the schedule of the class or the format of the class is a little bit different now. However, for me, fall semester, the class was like 6 to 6.5 hours long, twice a week, and then it reduces to like 3 or 3.5, something like that in the spring. And really what you do, the only thing you do is work on your senior collection. And you're kind of given or advised to use the time in the summer leading up to your senior year to sort of ideate and sketch, which if you've decided to pursue the BFA program, start now, literally just start sketching. I think I was so overwhelmed. I was doing like a corporate internship the summer before my senior year that by the time it came down to like getting ready for the fall semester, I felt behind because I had not just been able to sketch at my leisure, which I think is really important. I definitely felt rushed because I waited, and you don't want that to happen. So even if you're in your junior year, just start sketching, just start reading and renting materials, like books and magazines, gathering inspiration. It's never too early. Yeah, so really when you start the class, if you've decided to pursue the BFA, I don't remember the timeline of things exactly, but you really want to have your collection ready, like illustrations, flats ready, because what's going to happen, at least my year, this is how things were done. Maybe like the second or third class, you bring in every collection, like 20 to 30 looks, all of it. And you sort of propose it to your professor, or if you have like a critic or another professor helping out with this, you go through and explain each look one by one. Now, in my case, I think I wasn't really clear on what was going on, and so there were certain looks that I wish I could have made, but because I didn't walk the professor through each look, I think certain details of my ideas were missed. So take the opportunity when it comes time to sit down with your professor and go through your sketches. Really take the time, and even like you might feel awkward, walk them through everything, because if you don't, there may not be a conversation about what you're thinking, and for that reason they're going to miss out. So definitely walk them through every look. have like the construction really thought out, know where you're getting the materials, how, if any surface design elements are working. You don't want them to have any gray area. So like I said, I feel like that was a missed opportunity for me because it wasn't really explained well, but that's what you're gonna wanna do. If I could go back, I would do it again, and maybe my collection would look different today. I'm sure you also will get this sort of information from the university, but the first half of the school year, you spend time developing patterns for your collection. So that is flat patterning, that is draping, being prepared to know where you're getting your sources from. So a lot of materials research and material development. Really, it's a lot shorter than that, though. I think you have to have all your muslins done by the first or second week of November, because that's when you have muslin critique. And just in the same way that you would propose your collection, when you have time for the muslin critique, do the same thing. Walk through every single detail. Don't take too long because they are supposed to be brief, but all the important things, make sure you share. I think when that came around, I was very clear at that point with what I was doing. I prepared well, and it went really well for me. So after that condensed time period where you are constantly in the studio, I will stress you are in the studio all the time. It is very time intensive. It ends up being very expensive. And I think no matter what, most students would say that they probably spent more than what they had planned or imagined themselves spending. Things just come up. You might be thinking one material, and then you have your critique and they're like, nope, that's not going to work. So then you buy a second material. Things come up all the time. But I think for me personally, I had a corporate internship. It was paid, thank God. And so that really allowed me to explore a lot of possibilities with my collection. Time management is a huge thing, and they'll tell you that too. I've been working since I was very young, and I've never really had time off. However, I knew that my senior year, I really wanted to invest my time into my collection. I wanted to end the year with a bunch of patterns that I could use to start producing for my personal label. I wanted a really quality end to my career at the fashion school. So for those reasons, I saved and saved and saved, and I actually did not work my senior year. It's hard for me. It's like a mental perspective change, but you have to do what you have to do. And I know for me that I would be consumed by this, and I was right with that. I can't imagine if I had had the work schedule I had prior, all the 3 years leading up to it of my college career, I don't know how I could have made it work. And basically, once you have your patterns and things, it's really like a self-driven program. Once you have all of that figured out, after the muslin critiques, you have maybe 2 weeks for each look to be completely done in full fabric, final fabric, all the buttons on, zippers, closures, everything like complete on one look. And you basically just hand them in and move on to the next until you have all 7 looks of your collection done. That's another thing I forgot to mention, but for me, my year, the collection had to be 7 looks. You have to have at least 5 looks into the fashion show for it to be considered a collection. Now, either way, if you get 5 looks in the show or not, you should still end up with 7 looks for your portfolio. And you also make a thesis magazine where you talk about your research and methodology and all of that. However, if you don't make any looks in the show, this might have changed also, but they drop your degree from a BFA to a BA degree. And so, as long as you're on top of things and you're clear and you're maintaining good communication with the professor, you really don't have to worry about it. But that is sort of black and white, and I thought it was worth mentioning. Again, it might have changed like everything I'm talking about in this video. So anyways, this is turning more into like an informational session on the BFA program, which I guess is a good thing. But overall, I did have a great experience. I don't regret doing it. Now, I do have some regrets, and that would be, like I mentioned before, in the first collection proposal, I wish I kind of like knew what was going on, knew what I was walking into, and really been vocal about everything. And I forgot to mention how this works, but the year that I did BFA, you propose your collection on paper, and then the professor or advisor just kind of goes through and circles the looks that you're going to make, and you're going to spend all your time on that year. So I wish there was more conversation in that part of the process. However, if I were to do it again, I would be the one to start that conversation and be like, I don't know about this one because, I think this one works better, or I want varying hem lengths and I can't do that with that one, or I don't know, just making sure they really get what I'm proposing, because otherwise, like, they're not going to read your mind. So yeah, I kind of regret not being vocal enough, and whether that's my fault or sort of a communication error, that would be my advice to anyone watching this video, walking into their BFA project proposal. Additionally, when I was a BFA senior, we were still sort of like post-pandemic. We still were required to wear masks. And because of that, there was no organized trip to New York for fabric sourcing. So I had to do that all alone. Fortunately, I did make it up to New York City on my own and was able to visit Mood. I visited a bunch of fabric shops, trim shops, which is kind of unmatched. And if you can get up to New York City, I totally recommend doing so, because it's such a hands-on experience, one that you won't get online when sourcing. And then I also would recommend, if you're up there, schedule a 4-hour volunteer shift with Fab Scrap. In exchange for your volunteer hours, which really is just sorting things, like you sort buttons with the buttons, and you sort plaids with the plaids, and twills with the twills. It's literally just sorting fabric waste. You get 5 pounds of free fabric, and it's insane how much waste there is and how much waste that they've been able to redirect into their little fabric boutique. Definitely recommend checking them out. You can shop online. It's not the same though. And I think they have another center in Philadelphia too, so if that's closer, that's always an option. All of the fabric that I sourced for my collection was either dead stock, it was vintage garments that I had thrifted and repurposed, it was fabric waste, fabric scraps, all of that. So that's kind of what guided me on my sourcing ventures. And for that reason, I did thrift a lot of things that I ended up cutting into. I also visited secondhand craft shops for a lot of yarn and notions. Yeah, just keep your eye out for those things, because yes, it is more ethical, it's more sustainable, all of those things, but also it's way more budget friendly. That is my BFA experience at Kent State University in a nutshell. I would recommend it to people going forward. I ended up with a good number of patterns that I'm still using in my personal fashion label, which I started after graduation. I'm still using those today. And I think the focused time, all this time that you spend in the studio working on your craft and working on your trade, I think it really pays off in maybe sort of rediscovering yourself as an artist. I think that's sort of the purpose that they give you in school throughout projects and homework, but sometimes you get lost in the shuffle of just meeting deadlines and all that. So for me, really, I think since I started fashion school, even since I started having an interest in fashion, I have never felt closer to my authentic self or version of as an artist until after I had completed the BFA program. For me personally, I can just see myself and the growth that I had. Of course, there's ideas that maybe you had and were excited about at the beginning of the year, and then you finish and you're like, I wish I had done that differently. but I think in the end it's definitely a worthwhile experience. And like I said, I think if I hadn't done BFA, I probably would be a little bit more lost in terms of my label. I feel like now I have a very clear vision of my values and priorities as a clothing designer and a small business owner. Okay, with all of that being said, I did do a Q&A on my Instagram story a long time ago. So if you submitted a question, thank you so much. Sorry about the wait. But to hop right in here, the first question I received was, what was your favorite part? What was your least? Favorite part, as time consuming as it was, I really did enjoy studio hours. I liked being able to just start my day in the fashion building, be able to plug in my headphones, listen to a podcast, listen to music, and just really be in my element for a larger portion of my regular scheduled day. What was your least favorite part? I think maybe there's a couple. One thing that sort of bothered me throughout the process was I felt like once I was locked in with the looks that I was producing, you're already so invested into the pattern making and the fabric sourcing and all of that, that there's really not room for changes. And they say that within the curriculum, that the whole point is to execute your initial design. So there shouldn't be any changes, because then it's assumed that, you went around a problem if you encountered one and did it maybe the way that you weren't planning to, because that's what you had to do. So I wish that there was more flexibility and that the design process and production process was more fluid, because there were definitely instances in the studio where I was working on something and I'm like, I designed this in an initial color, I had this whole print idea, but now that I'm seeing it together, it is just not the vibe, it's not coming into fruition like I thought it would. I wish I could make this a long sleeve instead of a short sleeve. I wish that there was maybe just more time for that flexibility. Maybe that's why, those sorts of things weren't necessarily encouraged, like changing your original designs. You're not supposed to do that. But I wish that there was time to do so, because I think it's all part of the creative growth process, and you learn and you're learning and you're self-teaching throughout the whole thing. So I think it only makes sense that you would be able to do those things and you would want to be able to make those changes. My second least favorite part would probably be the end cost of the collection and sort of just the BFA program in general. You can do everything you can to cut costs. I know I did. I was constantly using discounts, like I said, everything I sourced was secondhand or scraps. So everything was already pre-discounted, if you can say that, but it just ended up being so much money. And I really you can try to budget, but things come up and you have to be adaptive. I just wish maybe that in the future Kent State would implement certain scholarships and awards for students pursuing the BFA program. I know you can reach out to certain corporations or companies and request or propose sponsorships. I know in years past there's been some students who have done that. Maybe if there was more guidance on how to do that, that would be very helpful. But yes, so just make sure you budget wisely and know that, or really for you, if you're pursuing the BFA, it has to be worth it. The end product has to be worth it to you. Okay, and the next question I got was, how much time outside of class did you spend working on your BFA collection? So I think I already mentioned the class times. So it's obviously longer in the fall, shorter in the spring. I don't even know how to say this, but I was probably at least 5 days out of the week, I was spending my evenings on my collection. Sometimes it's better to go to the studio because that's where you can get your stuff done. if that's like what you need to do to be in that environment and really be productive. However, I was able to sort of have like two workplaces. One was obviously my studio space at the fashion building, and the other one, I have my own serger and sewing machine, which was very helpful at my apartment. And so some nights it was just really nice to be able to go home, like eat, and then spend no time commuting and just be able to work in the comfort of my own home. But that's besides the point. I think the number of hours, oh gosh, I would say like maybe on average like 4 hours, 4 to 5 times a week outside of the class time. And I think in the springtime, even though the class time was shorter, I definitely spent more time out of class, sort of making up for the lost time and the decrease in class time, really. But that's like when it was really crunch time. Like I said, you have 2 weeks for each look to be completely done. And I don't know, I would say I've never pulled so many all-nighters in my life. For me, it's not necessarily a problem. Like I can function on that, kind of. But yeah, it's definitely a time commitment, and you sacrifice many aspects of your schedule to be able to complete the collection as like a one-person show. The next question submitted was, did you learn anything new / exciting, or just practice your design skills that you had already had? I really think it was a little bit of both. The main skills that you use are probably draping and pattern making, which you have 2 classes for in your required curriculum. But I also believe that it was a lot of self-learning that happened. I resorted to YouTube a lot for guides on how to do certain things, and I think really is like the time where you have a bunch of ideas, and like because you are executing them, you have to figure out how to do things and like problem solve and use critical thinking skills. So yeah, I think I definitely learned a lot on my own, and then also I depended on the professor as a resource. I think never doubt your professor as a resource. Don't be afraid to ask questions. They've been doing this for a long time, and are really helpful with like providing demos, all of that stuff when you have a question or you're stuck or something. Our year, the questions that we had and our certain design issues sort of guided the professor on how they were going to go about teaching the class. So if one person was looking how to install buttonholes on their home sewing machine, that would probably be something that a lot of people were actually wondering. And so the next day or like that day, a demo would be provided. I know my professor never got tired of being asked questions, so I can't really name the specific things that I learned, but you've definitely become a lot more tactical and technical. And just overall, I think it made me more confident in my work and abilities. All right, and then the next question, how many of your classes were based off of finishing your senior collection? And so this is like what was really unclear to me before even starting the program. Only one class. BFA is just the addition of one class. If you do BA, you take all the same classes, but you don't take the BFA class. It's literally one class that differentiates the 2 bachelor's degrees. So, gosh, I think mine was just called BFA Thesis 1 and BFA Thesis 2, but that's it. Okay, next. Someone asked, how many opportunities did you feel you had after graduation? If you graduated already. I did graduate, and I think it just depends. I think a lot of people aren't aware of how Kent State differentiates the BFA versus the BA in fashion design. So if you pursue BFA, if you pursue BA, you do it on your own terms, and it's because that's what you want to do. I think having a full collection, whether you manufacture and produce that through BFA or if you do it on your own outside of BA, I think it does put you ahead. Do I think you have to do the BFA major to be able to come out with a good collection? No. I know plenty of people who have not pursued BFA and did a collection on their own time. So either they did that outside of schoolwork, outside of the assigned homeworks and projects, or they sort of made all of their projects cohesive senior year. So that way at the end of the year, they could put each look side by side and then call it something. However, I don't know. I think just either way, if you spend time making a collection, it does put you ahead. Technically, I think you become better with your presentation skills. It is really cool because you end up with a thesis, which if you don't do BFA, you don't have a thesis. And so that's interesting. I think that puts a lot of like respect on your name. At least I would hope so. Being able to talk about an issue that you deeply researched and committed your time to for a whole year, really more than a year. For me, I think it definitely worked in my favor. After graduation, I was asked to participate in a PBS documentary. That hasn't aired yet, but they saw my collection and wanted me to talk about it, so that was cool. I think in job interviews, it's a great speaking point to be able to talk about your senior thesis, the challenges, the findings, all of that good stuff. How many opportunities did you feel you had? So I don't know if I can really quantify the number of opportunities I've had, but I think I can answer that question by saying I do think it put me ahead, just as like a professional and as a creative in the industry. Okay, next question. Is there anything you wish the professors offered more guidance for? I don't know, like I said, the professor was a pretty open book in answering all questions and even like providing demos and all of those types of things. I do wish there had been more clarity after the first BFA like application, I guess. Like first, the way Kent State does it is you apply to be in the program, or you express interest just so they can kind of have a head count. And then you do like a whole collection proposal, sort of, your junior year, where you just do a bunch of literary research and maybe you have plans on like what sort of techniques or issues you're going to tackle. And then you like submit a couple sketches just to illustrate what you're thinking. And then you have to be accepted, or they ask you to revise it and you get a second chance to get into the program. So I think like the time from junior year to like when you start the BFA program, your senior year, it's, I don't know, everyone's on summer, so there isn't a lot of communication, but I wish that personally, like maybe the outline would have been better or something like that, so I had known exactly like what to expect when I walked into the door first day of class, fall semester, because you really hit the ground running. Like I said, it's like the second class that you basically have the professor decide what you're going to make. That is something also that I wish there was more communication around, like I said already. Sorry, I'm like repeating myself, but really there's only a couple of things that I would change. And I just wish that it was more of a discussion when you are sort of picking out the looks for your collection than just one person going through and circling the 7 looks that you're going to do. I think only you know exactly where you're coming from and exactly what each look entails. So for an outside opinion to sort of judge your abilities or judge your taste or really just curate the whole thing, the whole collection that you're going to spend your whole year on, and it's going to represent your whole career at Kent State Fashion School. I don't know, maybe it should be more of a roundtable thing, you know, or maybe it should be more of like a group critique, and I don't know. So that bothers me. That was one thing I wish there was more guidance, more communication on. And then also, I think critiques too. I just wish that the critiques or the critics were briefed better. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like maybe the critique should be a little bit longer. I know there's a lot of students that they have to get through, but I don't know, it was very abrupt, and I feel like we were cut off a lot in our final critiques. So I wish that there was more guidance and more organization about how the final critiques are supposed to go. Okay. Next question, were you ever being pushed to make something that wasn't your vision? Not necessarily, because anything that you could have made, you would have proposed at the beginning of the year. So, I mean, all of those ideas are coming from you. However, I wish that when the looks that you are going to make are being decided for you, I wish that there was more of a discussion and it wasn't up to one person. I also feel like the curriculum for BFA is sort of constricting to the creative process and especially the learning process. I mentioned this before as well, but sometimes there's instances where you're like, this is not working out. Like, I just totally need to rethink this, or, you know, this needs to be a skirt instead of pants, or I need to do patch pockets instead of inseam pockets or whatever. Like, changes like that come up, and technically, according to the curriculum, you're not supposed to stray away from your original design. So in that sense, I felt like maybe I was being pushed to do something that wasn't my vision at that current moment. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Okay, next question, what's your fave memory? I think just being in the studio was really special, especially after having sort of at least half of my college education sort of taken away from me, or college experience taken away from me because of the pandemic. You know, I think that had to be done, but I did miss out on study abroad. I missed out on a lot of face-to-face contact and critique. So I don't know, it's just really special to like see people again and make friends, and you really bond like over the late nights, and the critique becomes a lot more personal when you're in the studio late at night. You just sort of like grow closer to the people around you, to be honest, and make new friends and everything. So my favorite part was working alongside my classmates and sort of just bonding over the whole thing. Okay, last response was, in quotes, I want to know all the bad parts. So I think if I haven't already, I've sort of gone through and, you know, given my critique on the whole program and everything. Let me think if there's anything else that maybe I would change or didn't enjoy. I don't know, maybe just a synopsis of everything was, I wish that there was clearer communication. I wish there was more time for preparation and discussion at the beginning of things. I wish that there were more funding opportunities for BFA students. I wish that muslin and pattern making paper were readily available and provided for. I wish that final critiques maybe had an extended time for each student, and I wish that maybe the critics themselves really prioritized that time. It just seemed really informal for my year when we did it, and it was just sort of disappointing, to be honest, because this was like sort of your soul. You know, your collection is what you spend so much time on, what you're passionate about, proud of. And there were a lot of instances where it just was like the class and professionalism, I felt like, just wasn't there. Oh, one major thing, I don't think this will ever change. I know it didn't used to always be this way, but The studio closes at midnight and it opens again at 6 a.m. So if you are not one of the few fortunate ones to have access to a sewing machine or have one of your own outside of the fashion building, then you were kind of out of luck. And especially if you're working, like those hours just, you got to figure out some way to make it work. And you know, sometimes that's just impossible. I wish that we had 24/7 access to the studio that we are in fact paying for. So I don't know, if I think that's sort of like the short end of things, and just, you know, things that I wish were a little bit different. I was very, very grateful for the collaboration that you do spring semester with the photography students over at the VCD building. Basically, you usually have like 3 photo shoots to get your collection photographed professionally. It looks very professional if you get a good partner. But they have a fashion photography class, and so they are sort of paired up with a designer, and they work together to have a creative vision for the shoot. And the outcomes of every shoot that I was involved with were phenomenal. I worked with 2 great photographers, Grace and Greta, and I think it just went really well, and I still use those pictures today for swills, so that's something to definitely look forward to. However, this collaboration goes on while you are working on your collection, so you probably won't be able to get your whole collection photographed at one shoot, because you may have like a look left to do, you know, finishing touches on things. So the timeline is just like always tight. Things are moving quickly all the time, and that's just sort of the nature of the BFA program. Do I wish it was like that? Not necessarily, but that's just how it is. So with that being said, thank you so much for tuning into my video. I hope I was able to answer some of your questions. I tried to the best of my abilities to do so. If this discussion may have sparked other questions that you may have, put it down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer it there. And then if I get enough, I'll definitely do a part 2. I wish that going into BFA, or even just making the decision to go to the fashion school at Kent State, there had been resources like this to learn from. And so I hope that this video ends up serving that purpose for you and you learn something. And like I said, keep me updated. And if you have more questions, let me know. Thank you, and I hope you have a great day.